Thank you to everybody that's come. And Sam, it's the first time, right?
It is the first time.
And Arjo, first time.
First time.
Indeed, but everybody else has been before, so welcome back. You obviously all know me, but you're going to get to meet Rachel in a new way shortly. So Rachel will be presenting in Pecha Kucha style. So those of you that have been before, you know the format: 20 slides or 20 visuals, 20 seconds each. So Sam, this will be something that we'll be testing you on in due course.
Popping my Pecha Kucha cherry.
Absolutely.
Popping your Pecha Kucha cherry.
Yeah, there's a sentence.
And once Rachel has shown us her fantastic journey as a story and visuals, we're going to chat to Arjo. And I'm so chuffed that Arjo's come over from Hove to join us. I can only say Arjo's one of the most inspirational people, gives me goosebumps. What you did, and being part of your journey.
It's going to go downhill from here.
I'm feeling the passion.
What a
No,
setup.
there's we'll talk about the topic. So non-exec directors and advisors. When we get to that, you'll hear it from somebody who had them and is now one of them, and has done a lot of other things in between. And then there's a few announcements, as ever, and that'll include recommended reading. I'm surprised Georgina's not here. She always asks me about, looking forward to the new book, Jim, what's coming? So I'll share that with you. And then we will have a disproportionate amount of food. That's the upside of there not being quite as many as we were anticipating, but there we go. And drinks and stuff are here, so there we are, we will proceed. So thank you everyone for joining us. And Rachel, do you want to come and tell us your story? For those of you, in fact everybody here knows Rachel, right?
Yeah.
Of course you do, apart from Arjo, so you're going to get to hear about Rachel's journey. Go on.
Thanks. Do you press the buttons or do I?
It's on a timer, so when you're ready...
On your marks, get set.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Cool.
Can I go this side? So there's no pillar.
Okay, as soon as I go, you're on 20 seconds.
I still have I'll move around and then
Brilliant.
Okay.
you guys will
Right, hello everybody, I'm Rachel Markie. I am the Managing Director and owner of Seago Media, and we are based here at the track. We are in our 4th year of trading now, and for those of you who work in the track, you'll know a lot about us, but for those of you who don't, we are a creative digital agency. We do everything from branding, websites, creative and digital communication, specifically around social media, email marketing, etc. This is my family. This is my husband Ross and my 2 kids, so Elsie and Olive. Elsie is now 8 and Olive's 6, and they're quite a big part of my story and my career journey actually, and sort of the reason why I came out of corporate life. So in a bit I will tell you a little bit more about that. My time started at the Arts University in Bournemouth, where I studied arts and events management, and I left this in because I thought it was quite creative. So we won an award at our summer ball for our coming dressed as Chubba Chup lollies. And that was probably the majority of my degree, to be honest, was creating these. And then during uni I took a placement where I worked for a company called Firefly Sailor, and we travelled around all of the different festivals in the UK, providing multiple different stage services, but my job was to create content and to tell the story of that tour via what was then very early social media. I then went to work for O'Neill, the surf brand, and worked with them on a number of different things. So a couple of case studies here are a film that we launched called Fighting Fear, that was a global launch, the 60th year celebration of Jack O'Neill inventing the wetsuit, and this here was an activation that we did at Freeze Festival. I then went to work for Arun District Council and LOCOG to deliver the Olympic Torch relay for the Arun District, which is sort of what brought me back here really. And this is a couple of images from the events that happened in Arundel. My job was part of the event management team, but also to communicate that via social. I then went to work for Vivid, which are a broadcast production marketing agency. In my time here, I worked on various different productions, but my job mainly was to, again, create content for social media, and everything from sports car adverts to multiple different types of music videos. This campaign here was a party political broadcast that I managed for the Liberal Democrats at my time at Vivid, and it was the first party political broadcast where they used social media to extend that from just TV through to different social media channels. I then needed to get a mortgage, so I had to go and get a job that was a little bit more stable. So I went to work for Butlins. My intention was to be there for a few months, and I ended up there for 8-9 years. But in that time, my role was, I went there to be in charge of content creation for social media, and my time there extended into multiple different marketing and events roles. Then my daughter Elsie was born in 2017, and this is where sort of the story flipped for me. I went back to work after having Elsie, and then shortly after had my second Olive, and on maternity leave with Elsie I dabbled in a bit of freelance work. After Olive was born, I decided I wasn't going back, so things had to change for me. This is my lovely team, Hope over here, and Naomi, who most of you have probably met. We also have Matt, but he doesn't appear in photos ever, so it's just, we are a small team, the four of us, and as you know, we're here. Here's some of the brands that we have worked with and still work with, so a few here that we've developed, but some that we've come in and taken over and rebranded and done a load of work for. Companies like Middleton Sports Club we rebranded, here we go, here's some examples. So Middleton Sports Club, we came in during COVID, where they had lost all their members and were struggling to sort of get people back, so we came in and we built a strategy, a rebrand, relaunched the club for them, and they had a huge uptake of members as a result, which was great. And in Partnership, which were a financial services company, again, similar situation for them, where we went in and rebranded, and they were the two brands that formed Siglo, really. Here are some of the local brands that we work with in Bognor. So we've worked with the Regen Board, Pink's Parlour, Landing Place, which is no longer with us. Claire, who you may have met when she launched her book, we supported her with strategy. This here is Josh Connolly. He is one of our clients. He's a huge influencer in the mental health space, and we work with him on a number of different things, from all aspects of creative content creation, ads, book launches, working in collaboration with Penguin, etc. Some more brands that we work with now, so Tiller are a startup which are launching a management development and training app. Utopia Landscaped Gardens, which are a local garden firms, and Tudor Watches, which are a sub-brand of Rolex. We've been working with them for 2 years to support them with a number of different advertising campaigns. We also aren't just local, we do global work. So one of our big clients is the Bahamas Olympic Committee. They obviously own the Bahamas Olympic team, and we worked with them in 2020 to give them a brand and a website identity. In 2024 to give them a new brand and a new website identity, and we are in the process of building an app with them. We're also running an influencer campaign with Usain Bolt and Sonic at the minute. Matt's line was like, all I can tell you about this is it's the fastest campaign we've ever done. Cheers for that damn joke. But this is one of our latest and one of our, that I'm really proud of, campaigns. It's a Small Business Saturday which we ran for Arun District, where we worked with businesses in Bognor Regis, Arundel and Littlehampton to create a whole series of stories about independent businesses and like the heroes behind them. And that's me.
Fantastic. And no rehearsal, right?
No.
That was just straight off the cuff. Amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Rachel?
Wow. How did the Bahamas Olympic team link come about?
So one of our clients is an agent, a sports agent. So he works between the athletes and the brands that sponsor them. So he connects the gaps, I suppose, between Adidas sponsorship and the Bahamas Olympic team, etc. And one of the things that he said when he was sorting out those sponsorship deals for them is that unlike many competitors, they had no identity, no brand, nothing. So he brought us in to come and build that for them.
Amazing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's not flown us out there yet.
I love the way you peppered it in, sort of small brand, Bognorigas, Bahamas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
From one to the other.
Yeah.
How do you find switching between such sort of different scale or different, a global thing and a local thing? It's quite hard.
It is really hard, and really different expectations, I think. So the local market, with the greatest of respect, we actually find a bit harder because they've got more riding on it, and there's lower budgets, higher expectations, really.
Yeah.
Whereas those bigger brands like the Sonic campaign with Usain Bolt and the Bahamas Olympic team, they do have more disposable money, which for us means that it's not always as high pressure. We still deliver just as well, but I think the pressure of those is a bit easier.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Yeah.
If you're pitching locally, would you have Tudor watches, Usain Bolt, Bahama Olympic team on your pitch deck for the local stuff? And conversely, if you're pitching for something global, would you have the local Bognorigas business on it?
So,
or do you try and separate them?
It really depends on what it is we're pitching for. So, for example, if we were pitching for like paid advertising campaigns, then I would keep the Tudor story in, because although they are a big brand, essentially they're still just an e-commerce advert that we are creating, and so the structure and the theory behind that is the same no matter how big. So if it's local and that's what we're doing, we will still talk about that because we'll show evidence how we do it. And we've definitely gone for bigger pitches and used smaller business case studies, but more from a storytelling perspective. And the one thing that I think that we are really good at is pulling out emotion in those stories. So when you're running for something big, and ultimately I'm trying to tell them we're going to get the emotion out of it, that's what's going to help market, that's where we'd go.
Very good.
Okay. Sorry, I was just distracted by somebody looking through the window as somebody who was intending on joining us, but I think they're just being nosy, which is fair enough. Okay. Cool. We're going to move on, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Rachel's here, obviously, if you want to chat to Rachel anymore, you know where she is. So, the next part of the evening is Arjo, who I met in Hove around 2001, I think, or two, quite early on in your Spannerworks journey. Arjo founded a business that I knew nothing about, but I was advised, go find this man because search marketing is going to be huge. And so it turned out. And so what we're going to talk about, non-exec directors and advisors, I'd just like to weave a little bit of the Spannerworks story in, because I think everybody here has got some kind of connection to storytelling, marketing, communications more generally, whether it's through film and video, these guys, or in the education space, or CGLO business, and or software on the end. The themes, I think, will resonate. So can I just introduce Spannerworks?
Of course, yeah.
And then we'll talk about non-exec directors.
Sure.
So the early stages, around 99-2000, when I set up business in Brighton, I'd heard about there being all sorts of creative businesses in Brighton that were cool and interesting. But there weren't very many that were really kind of tearing it up in a big way. One that I discovered that was Arjo's business, and it wasn't creative in the sense of like making websites or doing brands. It was doing something totally different. It was working out how to get companies visible in search. And they were the first people really to get a reputation outside of Brighton doing this. So I had a non-exec director from a big media agency in London And he said to me, "You want to get on board with these guys down in Brighton, I've heard. So I sought you out from a recommendation from out of town."
That's good. Yeah, nice.
So non-exec directors, they were kind of useful to me. What happened with you with that, with Spannerworks? Because one of them got involved, right?
Sure. Okay. So we're going back a long way, and I think what's important is that, you know, I answer your kind of questions and stuff later on, because I've done quite a lot of different things over the years, and starting off a small company and being an entrepreneur, I've done about 3 different times myself, my own businesses, and this business that Jim's talking about was very successful. So that was a good springboard. Not everything's been successful, and also I invest and I advise on boards as well, and I chair a charity, and so I do a number of different things. And I think there are common stories to our businesses. How we start them, how we manage I love the fact that you put your family in there, because that's a key part of your story, and how you operate and what you bring to a pitch or a brand. And I think that in those days, I guess we all just worked really hard because the internet was booming. And because there was this sort of massive train leaving the station, to use a metaphor, as here, it felt like you just had to keep up with this thing. So we started looking at the global brands it started 96, 97, we were doing websites and coding and software development then, and I felt that was a really tough gig. And I spoke to Matt earlier, and obviously I've just heard your presentation, and that idea where you have to keep pitching and keep winning business and keep people, the freelance community is a lot bigger now, and that idea of contracting people in any shape or form, a sound editor, a copywriter, these things are a lot more common now. But when we started, I think we had to basically train staff to do the job that we didn't know what it was going to be, if you like. So there was a lot of young people together going, this internet thing is happening, and what can we do? And we knew that the big global brands had no idea what they were going to do with it. A lot of them barely have websites. They had websites, but they weren't functional, right? It was the airlines and the travel companies and the banks that first became, you saw the web as something that they could lower their costs with by servicing their customers online. So we didn't really know what we were doing. We were a bunch of coders that had a lot of opportunity and excitement around this thing. And one day I was doing this thing where we were pitching for work, we were doing software development, it was tough, but website design, and we were making money. And then there was sort of 6 of us in the company at this stage. And I said to everyone, what search engine are you using? And I just found Google about a week before. We knew we'd all found Google a week before because it had launched. And it was a week later, and I said, what search engine is everyone using? And everyone just said Google. And I was like, okay. And I literally had an epiphany that night. I sort of dreamt it. I don't know if I dreamt it, I was awake or asleep. And I thought, I cannot keep pitching for work all the time. I cannot keep pricing for work all the time. I've got to have a service that either saves clients money or brings in income for them. And of course, all marketing, if you like, is probably the latter. It's making essentially new income for clients. So I literally went in the next day and said to my business partner at the time, we need to become not a cost or like building websites at the time, they weren't transactional. You couldn't go on one of our websites and buy a ticket or something because it was so early on the web. It was hard even getting them to work in different browsers and stuff. So I guess we took off very quickly once we made that decision, that we became part of growing in income for a company, which is essentially the nuts and bolts of marketing. But then we didn't know what we were doing. In terms of a business, we didn't know how a business ran really. It was like, you make some money, you bill for it, that's all I really knew. So I had a business advisor soon after. I remember ringing, there was a business advisory service in Brighton, and I rang it, and I remember
Sussex Enterprise, that's right.
Yeah. They didn't answer the phone the first time, and I was like, okay, don't answer the phone. Second time I rang, it was like the phone was passed around lots of different people, and I was imagining this office where no one really knew what they were doing. And they said, someone will call you back, and then I don't think they did. And then I was like, on the third time of asking, eventually I spoke to Ray.
Yeah.
And it was just a disorganised kind of thing. And he ended up being my sort of sounding board and advisor around business stuff. And then later on, as the business was really booming, he became a sounding board and right-hand person for me to work with, because I never felt I could make big decisions on my own. I just thought that was too risky. Even though I had a strong instinct, I didn't need someone to tell me that my idea was wrong, because that's why I was an entrepreneur. I wasn't employable by other people. I had a strong idea, but I didn't have the confidence necessarily to always back myself in an idea. It might be the right idea, but I needed someone to say, what about this, what about that, should we alter it a little bit? And I'd be like, no, I think this is good, but I hear what you're saying. And that sounding board process was what massively helped me. I don't think I could have grown the company without that. So I just found the right advisor for me at that time, and me personally, I think is the key thing I wanted to say. I think taking template kind of ideas of kind of a generic advisor or a non-exec, or in those days you'd have to write business plans for bank managers. They never read them, they never really knew what was in the business plan, it was all fiction. It's, becoming a bit less than that now. Now you have a pitch deck for funding, or you still have to do that if you borrow money from banks, but that's kind of a tough way to go. So yeah, did we write a business plan? I don't think we wrote. Yeah, Ray did write a business plan.
He did,
right.
because he employed me to come in and help him.
There you go. There you go.
To help you. That was how it worked.
Yeah, and I was like, I hate this thing. This is a document. I did not have the attention span to write this thing, but I needed people that did that stuff around me. So yeah, it was really critical. I would say having someone around to sense check you.
Yeah.
In a way.
So that was
the right person.
So that was that was advisors. Ray came in as an
business
advisor.
Yeah, just on that.
Did Spannerworks have non-exec directors, like advisory board or anything like that?
No, we never did any of that. It wasn't really even almost a thing in those days, because that came with a lot of software startups and a lot of Silicon Valley stuff, and all that funding thing that happened later, which was probably by 2006, 7 or 5, 6 that was starting to happen a lot more. But in 2000, and then you had the dot-com crash in 2000, so everything was sort of disrupted then for a couple of years.
Okay.
But we didn't have it. I know some companies did, yeah.
Well, I did go down that route and got a non-exec director in as a chair, essentially with an angel investment of about 50k initially. And that was kind of helpful because it gave me confidence that I was doing something to grow the business. But like you, I didn't have a business plan or even know how to write one. But I learned pretty bloody quickly with the help of my non-exec director person, who very humbly came to see the bank with me to get what was then a loan. There was the small firms loan guarantee scheme, where a bank would give you essentially a government-backed loan if you could match fund. So for the 50k that Uncle Nick was putting into the business, we actually went and raised another 100 off the back of that, and that was around 2002. But you're right, there weren't that many people doing it, because I started having conversations with others in Brighton to see, as Uncle Nick's other suggestion, get your exit sorted out. And I was like, we've only just started. But planning the exit route by finding others of like mind that might want to grow something. And the thing that I was kind of struck by working in creative was, endless, relentless pitching. Exhausting. The only thing that's more exhausting than that is being a full-time teacher, in my experience subsequently.
Yeah, I have enormous, in the years I've done advisory work, quite a lot of creative and digital businesses that don't have products, so service or businesses, certainly in Brighton and some in London. I've worked with quite a few, and I've seen the grind that founders can get into when you're constantly re-pitching, which is why I asked you those questions. Obviously you've got quite a slick pitch there, but it's quite difficult to keep doing that, right? And Matt was talking to you about how much time you spend on sort of writing a proposal and getting clarity with clients, and it's really hard to charge for that process in creative businesses. And that, I think, when you analyse it, can take out a huge amount of your hours a week, which essentially is your income. So that for me was like to sort of wake up in bed and go, tomorrow I don't want to do that business anymore. It was also fortunate timing because the internet was just taking off, so almost anything you did could bear fruit. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult model, isn't it? It still is. It's as hard as ever.
And the day rates haven't really changed in 20 years, is the reality.
Yeah.
And particularly more so in the arts, where £200 a day is still the recommended entry-level rate for artists of a professional qualification and standing.
How many of you have business plans, just out of interest? That's not a trick question. I'm genuinely curious. Anyone? Half a business plan. That's
If we're going to counts,
okay, so I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because not long ago, everyone said you needed a business plan, and you'd write this 40-page load of nonsense, and there was a lot of text, and you'd spend ages over it. The charity that I chair, Audio Active, that works across East and West Sussex, sort of Crawley, Hastings, through to Bognor Regis and all East and West Sussex. Because we're funded, and a lot of funding comes via the government, and we do like a lot of violence reduction work, we do a lot of youth mental health service work through music. We have to write all these plans, you know. And as I was driving over here, I was speaking to the chief executive, and he was saying, "Yeah, I've got to do this 3-page spreadsheet, but behind it is about 40 pages of other stuff that they won't look at, but it needs to happen." You know? So,
Sorry, Arjo, what's the charity?
it's called Audio Active. Yeah, Audio Active. It's doing amazing, incredible work. We do things like so in what we don't see unless we're tuned into sort of wayward teenagers is we might see the end problems on our streets. What we don't see is there's multi-agencies constantly trying to piece it all together. So youth mental health service, police, probation, teachers, maybe 6 or 8 different services, sometimes health service as well. And they're trying to hold things together. And of course, because youth funding is a lot of youth-related funding has almost disappeared from the local government. There's a lot of sort of fending for yourself. So we might get a call and say there's a problem it could be quite a small area of East or West Sussex, a town you wouldn't expect anything, a village even, where there's maybe a train station and a pub, and there's some sort of starting to be some drug counting line going on, and we will literally go on and put a rap session on in that car park of that train station. We literally did one in train stations all the way east of Sussex. I digress, but it's very, very interesting to see how multi-agencies kind of work, and that's my learning of bureaucracy, that actually there's quite a lot of value in it. Whereas so we don't have business plans typically. I'll never write one again in my life, and I'm allergic to them. But there is also value in sort of having checks and balances if your businesses grow and succeed. It's also good, and this is why I think non-execs come in, where you kind of get someone that takes care of the governance side for you and make sure that you can carry on doing business, but also make sure you don't drop the ball and your strategic direction is tested. Mm-hmm. So I left quite a successful business just at the start of COVID. I was chairing them because I felt their strategic direction was completely wrong going into, once furloughing had started, I felt that they had a chance to pivot their whole business away from service and into product. And they didn't want it, but I was fine. And I was like, okay, but I don't think you'll succeed. And they're now out of business. I'm not saying I was right because of that, but that's what happened. And it was that COVID just gave an enormous opportunity to sort of maybe reorientate. You know, global brands, big, successful business at the time. Anyway, progress again.
No, it's interesting. Any questions about non-execs? Does anybody have a non-exec, by the way? Or thought about it in the roadmap, where you might be going?
It's certainly featured in my one. I've worked for a lot of large groups that do have sort of NEDs and advisory committees and all of these different things under different guises and names and such. I suppose what I'm sort of wrestling with just at the moment is what's the right time to bring those in, because if you've got 2 bits of nothing, then it's going to look a little bit strange to try and start courting somebody who ultimately could be quite useful when you're turning over something substantial. So, but at the same time, to get them in at the ground and go along with you on that journey, I think it's quite attractive as well. So I don't know if you had any thoughts around that.
I think you need revenue trumps almost everything else when you've got a small business. It buys you time and decision making, and it allows you to invest into things, doesn't it? So, I mean, I know obviously it has some profitable element, but assuming that you've sussed out the profit side, if you can't suss that out, then maybe either you're not big enough or you're in the wrong business or you've got the wrong model. It's possible. But you need revenue, and there's no point bringing in more cost to a business until you've got revenue, right? But there are non-execs that will work on equity basis. There are non-execs that do things with social impact and are really keen on working with certain startups that are working in certain areas, so that happens. And also, there are a lot of us, and I include myself in that just love working with growing businesses. I just love that. And I also love the fact that I'm not responsible for your success anymore. You know, I love that side of it. I'm like, wow, they're going to make it, but they're doing all the hard work, and I just add that steer to it, if you like. Which sounds a bit slopey shoulders on me, but that's where I'm at. You know, I just don't want to have that. I feel your responsibility. It's heavy, you know. And being an entrepreneur is one of the toughest things I think you'll ever do in your life, and it's a personal journey. It's personal development at minimum. And if you're successful, that's just almost like you're fighting through all these other things before success is even a thing, whatever it means to each of us, success. So I think it's a very personal journey, and I think advisors, I mean, should you need someone at an early stage, it's got to be chemistry, it's got to be a fit, it's got to be like they're interested in you and you're interested in what they can bring. And I don't think there's any other theory other than, you know, you can bring them in early, they've just got to be right. You know, you've got to ask the right questions, you've got to check whether or not they're going to increase your revenue, maybe by strategy. You'll be in the right place in 2 or 3 years' time, you're going to have new products in the market, or you're going to go for a new segment in the market. I work with a film production company, I was saying to Thomas quite a few years ago in Brighton, they were big clients. And I said to them, well, what's your client list? And we went through it, and they're all surfers and windsurfers and nice bunch. And they named all their clients after different types of fish. And of course the sharks were in there as well, although I know they're mammals, right? They're not fish, are they mammals? What sharks? They're mammals. Oh no, that's whales.
Whales are mammals.
So hold on, what are sharks? They're not. Anyway, there's a
Scary?
trick question.
They're
Big
scary.
fish, are they? Big scary fish.
Okay, thank you. Right, that's how much I know about the sea. Anyway, so we named all the clients in this, and this is a small creative outfit. They had 8 or 10 people, and they were doing amazing films for big brands and stuff in London, ads and all sorts of stuff. And then we went through their client list, and we spent the first stage of our relationship was all just about who are your clients, what are you doing for them, why aren't you making any money? And of course we ended up with, there was a few clients that were big, lovely on a pitch deck, noisy clients, needed a lot of servicing. The projects were big for them, but they bled the company. They weren't making any profit on those clients, so they were called sharks. And the challenge there was, okay, how do you exit that part of your client list and never pitch again to those people knowingly? You know, and in the pitch process, if you find that you're falling into a kind of shark trap again, just get out. There's no point, life's too short. And also, it will just kill you again. No matter what you charge them, they'll kill you again. So that's the sort of thing where I think an advisor, if you like, in terms of revenue, can help you in a year or 18 months' time not make mistakes by changing something that seems quite small now. But you can't change that when you're bigger. It's really hard, right? You know, we had global clients, and some of them were murder to work with, but it was really hard to drop on them because we were a big agency. We were working in different countries, and it's very hard to let go of a client there. You have to come up with a bloody good reason, you know, because your reputation is, you know, is important, really important. So I think, yeah, when you bring advisors in and what they're going to do is really, really important, and whether you need strategy. Maybe you all know what you're going to be doing in 3 years' time, and you don't need strategy. No, I mean, I'm saying...
Yeah, no, I'm only saying, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Within 3 years' time,
And some people don't know what they're going to be doing in this changing market. And I find myself having to... I bought crypto years ago because I needed to know what was going on, not because I thought it was going to return any money. I just thought I need to understand this complicated thing. AI is the same. I use AI tools now just so I can understand what they are. I don't need to use them for my business, but I need to use them to have conversations with people that are facing those challenges. You know? So we're all fighting all that sort of stuff all the time, aren't we? But yeah, I think deciding before you meet anyone what type of person might be helpful is kind of the key thing. And if you do it when you're small, actually, it's kind of almost better timing sometimes. You know, and the other big problem is if you grow and you're still not making money, then you can't afford the next kind of level up of advice or of you know, like hiring your first good salesperson, let's say. Hiring your first, not someone who's a founder, but your first kind of going out there and hire. It's really difficult to get right. It's an expensive person, it's hard to find them, why will they join you? So you need money kind of in the bank to kind of almost offset that risk, because you might not get it right with the first one. So I think, yeah, thinking these things through early, if your path is to scale the business, it's not always about funding, it's about making those decisions at the right time. And we know we've made lots of bad decisions as well along the way, right?
Yeah. Some howlers,
Yeah.
but also some brilliant ones. I mean, if you don't mind me indulging you, I just want to tell a brilliant story. The best one was, we went to Phoenix. Do you remember?
Yep.
Gallery.
No, Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh.
And this was when Arjo had sold Spannerworks to iCrossing, which is now largest independent Marcom's agency, in fact, as in not part of WPP or any of those big groups. And we were there with the Americans. I just called them the Americans because they were sort of alien culturally in lots of ways. Although you made the choice to get into a relationship with them out of many choices, right? There were loads.
There were, yeah.
Loads of suitors, which is why Arjo is such an inspiration to me, because to create a business where everybody wants to buy you because you're the leader in the class, basically, of natural search, paid search was the business, right, at the time, but more services around it. But yeah, in the UK, gold standard. But when we went to America, we were the only ones that were actually making money, right?
That's
So we were the smart ones, and that made I
Yeah.
felt so proud to be part of a team that was whipping their asses, and we won the Bank of America business.
Yes, that's right.
And
That's a good anecdote, and it actually ties to something I was talking to Matt about earlier. You reminded me of something there. It's about pricing, and pricing is so difficult to get right because you want the business, because you're a small business and this new client's going to make a difference, but you know what you need to do, and it's kind of a really difficult thing, and it's the make or break in lots of small, especially creative businesses. We were pitching for Bank of America via the American owners of the company who had the business relationship in America. We went to their headquarters, and me and my head of social media, so I hired a guy out of a big London PR agency, and we built one of the first big social media teams with an agency in the UK, where we only hired people out of journalism and PR, or comms, not content writers as such, but narrative, story-driven writers, people that understood kind of, before viral stuff was mentioned that much, it was kind of around that time. So and they hired journalists, right? They brought in people that could write good journalistic stuff. Anyway, the night before the pitch, we were in the hotel, and the head of social media and I were pitching it the next day. And it was 3 a.m, and I was working on one part of the pitch deck, he was working on the other. And I rang his room and I said, Anthony, how are you doing on that pitch deck? He said, yeah, I think we're there, I'll come into your room and we'll go through it. He came in, and I said to him, so what do you reckon on the price? And he said, I think around $500,000, $500,000 I think it was. And I said, okay. And I said, how many people are we pitching tomorrow? He said, well, I think there's about 8 or 9 in the room from Bank of America. And it's Bank of America, like one of the biggest retail banks in the world. And I was like, you okay if we double the price? And that was what it was based on, me just saying that. And he said, yeah, I'm fine with that. And we went in, and they didn't even ask us the cost of the program in the room. And we didn't overcharge them. It's just with a big complex client, you will always lose money if you don't build in a very big safety margin, because it's going to be going around. And I remember pitching for Vodafone, and there was 10, 11 people. It was about this sort of size around the table, and half of them hardly ever meet, every 3 months or 6 months. And I was like, oh, how are you? I haven't seen you in 6 months. That's the marketing team. But they were all over the country, and huge egos, and so you've got to charge high when it comes to that, because you're dealing with multiple people. But so when you're small, they're really key decisions, aren't they? They're really key decisions. And if you can spend 10% in the next 3 months, if you can spend 5 hours less a week on generating the same amount of proposals out there, you're winning half a day of your key time. So, setting yourself little challenges of that, I think is really, really important, because your time just bleeds away all the time into these things. And if you've got family, you've got other things to do, it's valuable time, right? And I didn't see my kids for the first few years because I was just working all the time. Luckily I had a partner that tolerated that, but it was crazy. And now, you look back on that and think, well, maybe the work-life balance in those days wasn't as good as it is now. There's a trade in that, isn't there? There's definitely a trade. Yeah. Any other questions about sort of non-exec advisors? Has any of you taken sort of professional advice in that you paid for yet? What about? Yeah.
Well, we have a couple of business advisors.
Sorry.
We have a couple of business advisors. We do pay them on a monthly basis. One of them we've been working with for the past 5 years, probably. Another one last 2. They both play. Again, we don't call them non-executive directors. They're not part of our company, but obviously they know everything inside out. And then we seek, when we need an advice, sometimes Ned points out that we need a specific advice, and we need to go and ask them, obviously from their experience and everything. But again, would that be classified as a non-executive director?
No, a non-exec director is someone that sits on your board, and then you would only need that if you're starting to maybe get funding, or you're pitching for brands that maybe want to see some of what's behind the scenes here. Is it you're pitching at a certain level. When you get to a certain level, they start asking about insurance, they start asking about your board, they start asking about your turnover. There's certain things that they might want to see. So a non-exec director is a much more formal version of an advisor who has legal responsibility. So if I chair a board, then I've got a lot of responsibility for making sure the company is governed in a certain way. So for example, if you're pitching for funding, having a non-exec that has a history and a background that has scaled businesses will help you obviously with the funding, ideally.
It's about trust, because a non-exec is bipartisan or not going to be biased. They kind of sort of sit a little bit back within that.
I think ideally that's the case.
Because you don't have a vested interest in a sense, because you're not taking money out from the business.
Well, often equity is involved in non-execs. When you're at early stage, you can't afford to pay sort of commercial rates for sort of maybe someone that's really experienced. You might say offer them a bit of a blend, and you might say, you come to an agreement on the monthly amount, but then you basically give them an equity stake in your business if you sell enough. If there's an idea of growth there already. So it can be different things, but you're right. It is a kind of ideally a stamp of sort of a bit more trust that I'm invested in a business at the moment that's scaling quickly. It's a software business, B2B, and it works in sports marketing and ticketing and stuff. And it's the one founder still making all the decisions. It's turning over 2-3 million now. Be 2 million this year, and it's still just him on the board. It's him, the board is him. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm not asking to go on your board, but you need someone for the next stage, because there's just all the ball is completely in your court, And if you decide to do something that I disagree with, I've got no one there to sort of check your thinking, So I think there's a stage where you have to have it if you're scaling quickly. If you're not, then you might just want a sounding board, which is, I think, doesn't need to be a non-exec. I think that's quite a good idea. You've got an advisor that you can sort of pick up with as and when. That's smart. Yeah.
But equity, as you mentioned, if you're not clear, is it's just the sale of a percentage of the shares, typically done for like Dragon's Den style, 10% for 50k or whatever it is. It's that kind of thing is what we're talking about. So in the case of somebody like Peter Jones, when he takes a 25% stake, if it's anything north of 25%, it's usually to have an active involvement, right? At some point, as in like working on decision making or strategy, or looking for an exit route or whatever it might be.
But you'd want him, wouldn't you? If you were
Absolutely.
in a scaling business and Peter Jones is interested, you want him on your board because it's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to experience and not having fear. Like running things at a certain scale, when you see a smaller business grow, scaling up, you know all the things that are going to, most of the things that are going to happen to them in the next few years. You can see it way ahead because you've done it so many times. You can see and given that the founders in the business are so busy on the day-to-day and just keeping the wheel turning, there's a little bit of steering needed before people hit the buffers again and again and again. I was told when I was going to hit the buffers in my business, and I hit them every time. It was like, absolutely on the money, except when you get to 30 people, it's going to get like this. I remember someone said when you get to 70, and then they said when you get to 100, it's going to be like this. And over 100, that was when I was really struggling then, because I was just struggling to remember everyone's name. That's horrible. For me, that was horrible. I was really uncomfortable. I didn't like that at all. There were all sorts of points you get to that can be predictable. Very predictable.
And so in that process, you've seen it happen time and time again, and there's a stage on the journey, then you can, it's like pretty certain that of what's going to happen depending on the scale of the business, like clouds or pattern.
Yeah. And again, all of your problems have been solved before, right? Because there's so many businesses that have come before you. We work in it's almost open data. You can find all the case studies and you can find out all the information of businesses like yours that succeeded or failed. So, but no one's got a lot of time to go study a load of other businesses, right? So this is the thing, how do you access that sort of thinking and that knowledge without having to spend a lot of time on it yourself? Yeah.
It's shortcuts, isn't it? I think in
so.
a lot of cases, it's, as you said, shortcuts with chemistry is the kind of ideal blend. Because if you can get somebody that you tune into and you can find from them how to make that experience work for you, then that's where the growth takes place. Because it is the personal growth, absolutely.
Yeah, the personal journey I think is the number one thing. I think everything else is secondary as an entrepreneur. I think your balance between what you want to do professionally, what you've got on personally, and then what you've got on as a person running a company, which is no hiding place. That's the brutal thing about running your own business. There is no hiding place. Everything is you. Every failure is you. You take it home or you try not to take it home, but it's all you. So the personal development side of it, what I do with entrepreneurs when I work with people initially, is we spend a lot of time on the person first. And until that's done, I wouldn't push too much on anything else. I mean, it's going to be quite a quick process, depending on the person. But you've got to work out what the person or people. I mean, brilliant noise with 3 founders. And working with 3 founders with equal shares was really difficult. That was, and I never thought that was a good model. When they split apart because it just was.
Mine was the same. Get Frank.
Right.
3 founders.
Yeah, so there's certain things like that. My original business partner in Spannerworks when I was growing at Robin, he's a dear friend of mine still now. I met him when I was sort of running a one-man band web dev company, me, and he was waiting in a restaurant that I used to go to in Brighton, and I got into a conversation, and he was a computer science graduate, and I said, what are you doing working here? He said, do a bit of coding on the side. I said, do you want to start a company together? And we just did. And so we were 50-50 for ages. And then it got to a point where we were quite big, and he was getting more and more stressed out at how fast it was scaling, and I was enjoying it scaling quickly. I thought it was great, and he wanted to go, and I kept saying, don't leave, it's okay, I'll take on this or that. But at one point I remember that being 50-50 but all the scaling of the company was coming from my effort was a problem for me. So I went to him and said, look, that's not going to work for me, so we need to renegotiate. And we renegotiated successfully. We didn't fall out or anything, it was good. But I spoke my truth about that because I remember thinking, I'm stressed about this business all the time, and you don't actually really want it to grow much more. So we had to renegotiate that. So things can change as you grow quite quickly, right? And a couple of big clients, a couple of big projects can make or break you, and hopefully they make it.
Brilliant. Thank you. We got loads of food set over there, and literally loads of food.
Top 3 in mind.
As ever, I've got a couple of announcements, but thank you so much for making. It's it's a joy to be able to bring people I've known for a long time to Bognor and just, hey, look, meet Arjo, he's one of the many. There's lots more people. So what I did want to say to everyone was thank you so much for supporting these events. I know there's not many of us here tonight, but we've done it for a year and there wasn't anything like this here, right? I know that we've got, kind of early stages of trying to make it stick, but after this event tonight, the next one is on a slightly different footing. We're going to start rotating around different venues. Some will be here still, but we're going to be in Sussex Film Office's base in Arundel next month, and we're going to look to do things in a mixture of different venues. So to try and hand the project over to the community and grow it in slightly different ways. That's the plan. So yeah, it's an entrepreneurial endeavour in its own right, and we'll see how that plays out. But the joy of it is in having everybody keep coming and wanting to participate. So,
do you stay in it, Jim? Is it a program that you're invested in for a while? Or
I'm kind of I'll tell you, I'll be really transparent with everyone. I'm invested in it because I've put a lot into it personally, because I love doing it. I love evenings like this, even when it's winter and I'm sat on an Arundel railway station. But I've got a takeaway box of something or other and I'm happy. No, it's great. I love it.
I'm getting the sense that people eat well in
Absolutely.
When Jim's about, we get to eat.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, Fitz Arcade Lounge in Littlehampton, the pizzas are a big favourite there. So no, we've tried to make it something that is open and accessible, but open to being shaped as well by the people that are part of the community, because that's how we grew it in Brighton. We were talking about this earlier, It was very much we all kind of want each other to succeed, and that was what I think helped. That anecdote about the Americans was that it was really similar when my business, Get Frank, we were pitching in London against London agencies. We just wanted to beat them. We were fiercely competitive about bringing the business back to Brighton and building Brighton as a hub. So it can happen outside of London, is the
I
message,
think
I think.
these events are so important in terms of people having access to expertise and to knowledge, and we can all get so busy and so involved in what we're doing, we don't get that chance to sometimes learn something that could be really crucial, could be really important. And these events, the people are getting to come to these events for free. So someone gets to hear, people who get to hear some of your level of expertise, and I think that's a great gift, and that's really important, and to hear Rachel speak and people's journeys. There's always something you can take away, whether you think how relevant it is, there's going to be something you're like, that was really key, that was really interesting. So I think it's on the track. We're hoping, we're very much hoping in some capacity to be helping to, nourish this. Nourish and flourish. And,
Nourish the flourish, I like it. That's good.
Nourish the flourish and maybe, keep it going.
If any of you want to connect on LinkedIn, by the way, please do. And I check it every few days.
It just came out.
I'll send this around.
But yeah, please feel free. And happy to talk.
Great,
Thank you.
Excellent. Right. A couple of announcements and then the food commence. So, actually I've got my order out of whack, but never mind. Recommended reading. So this is a bit out there, but it's a book about architecture. Anybody come across Christopher Alexander?
No.
Okay. Now, a creative I met many years ago introduced me to this book, and he just said, the way your brain operates, it's like pattern language in architecture. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what you mean, I better go find out. This short video on YouTube is about 5 minutes, and it's a wonderfully humble account by Christopher Alexander, who is revered in the world of architecture. It's not a discipline I know, never practiced in it, built a shed, that's about as far as it goes. But his book is about making architecture accessible to everyone. And it's a book about patterns, 253 patterns of towns, buildings and construction. So there's literally everything from how to build a carport on the side of your house, how to construct the ideal flow through a kitchen into a dining area, how to build a small village for around 600 people. It's literally patterns, but built at that level. So my simplistic brain goes, that's Lego. Or actually, no, that's Roblox. And it's the same kind of thing, right? So it's design. It's the principles of design, but played out with patterns. So it's a wonderful book, and unfortunately he died about 3 years ago, but his family have kept the website, the official website, patternlanguage.com, running. And I looked on it yesterday, and a visual in the gallery section is of a window, a very specific window with a fantastic curved shape at the top, a bit like a church window, in West Sussex, would you believe? Yet all his fame and glory is about the university campus created in Oregon, which was one of his architectural feats. But it's amazing how there are connections between everything. And this is literally in West Sussex somewhere. So that is now on my list, along with my son's desire to see steam railways in every part of the UK over the next 12 months. I will be looking for every example of Christopher Alexander's architecture within West Sussex. So that's our weekend, you know? So it's a marvellous thing, I really recommend it. And the great humble story he tells, just to narrow it right down for you, is all about how he turned down a job in his 20s because he didn't think he was ready for it. Now, it's a brilliant story of humility and humanity, actually, and the book is all about humanity, and he goes on to write loads of things about humanity, which, in the age of AI and everything, couldn't be more important. But he tells the story of how, as a young architect, he got a brief to build a village in India for 600 people. And he was like, I'm not qualified to do this. I'm qualified to make buildings, but I'm not qualified to channel the energy of 600 people that need to live in this community that needs to be built. So he went and spent the next 15 years learning everything he needed to learn in order to be able to address that type of brief. Because he said, if ever I was given that brief again, I didn't want to turn it down. But I wanted to have the confidence and the knowledge that I could channel the energy of 600 people to build a village. And so, yeah, he did. And he built university campuses and all sorts of other things, which were amazing. So, there's loads of great stuff about pattern language. And the book itself is just a wonder. You pick it up and you go, I've always wanted to know how to make a shed on stilts in Arctic conditions or some such, you know. It's literally just lots and lots of very random constructions. But it's a beautiful book and loads of things. It'll appeal to Ned, no doubt, with a construction and engineering background. But it will appeal to everyone, I think. And that's the kind of joy of creative exploration for me, is when you find something that, yeah, it speaks your language, but it's coming from a totally different
It feels like there's a version for small creative businesses, pattern language. It feels like there should be a manual.
Absolutely.
I don't know if anyone's written the manual, because they've written loads of other manuals, but I haven't seen it.
You challenged me inadvertently to that when we were in the Fuse Box in Brighton, which is the backstory to how this place got created. I remember you saying to me, it would be great, because Arjo came in as a mentor to mentor lots of businesses. It'd be great if you just had like a single sheet of like the business's at least high level plans. That's where the lean canvas came in, because you recommended that. And then,
that's right, yeah.
And I remember you saying to me, you really need to write a book on business models. So it's Adventures and Wisdom Institute. It's a work in progress, and it's kind of where it's headed.
Still building.
Still building. Yeah. But I might have to make it out of Lego to make it real. Okay, so this one I've done before. Most of you know about the mailing list. Feel free to join it. It will be circulated. There's a message from Ben Kavanagh, who most of you probably know if you haven't met Ben. He's got something on the go at the moment through the Coastal Catalyst programme, shaping the future, helping young people access creative careers. It's exactly the sort of thing, Sam, that you would probably add loads to. It's a knowledge exchange event where he's seeking to get everybody locally on board who is interested in the agenda to work out how they can actually make it reality in this specific geographical hub. So, again, I'll send this round. Okay, couple of things and then we can go neat. The final event of this series, I've completely scrapped the one on business angels because I asked loads of angel networks to come And they're all like, so how many companies are turning over 5 million plus? I was like, okay. So we're going to do a session on aspiration and ambition instead at the film office. And somebody said to me the other day, how come you haven't done a talk? And I was like, yeah, that's a good point actually. You've been quite busy getting people like Arjo to come in who know much more about an awful lot of things than I do. But one thing I feel quite comfortable and confident speaking on is the relationship between these two things. I spent a lot of time on ambition and aspiration. So it won't be a long, drawn-out talk, but it will be one that helps us collectively determine what the next version of this looks like. So it's going to be a different type of session. Ned is going to be doing the Creative Showcase. Pleasure. And we will look forward to that. And then we'll have a bit of an activity around putting this together, what this next series of events looks like. So yeah, feel free to bring your ideas and inspiration, and we'll do it through what is essentially the difference between developing big, holistic, personal trajectory, a lot of what Arjo talked about with entrepreneurship, as opposed to ambition, which is quite simply just meeting a goal, but probably doing it as an achievement and doing it well. But yeah, aspiration, a bit more holistic. So we'll look at how those two things relate. Okay, so then what next for Flourish? Might we charge for these things or create some sort of aligned with the track, meshed with the tracks program? That's what James and I have been talking about this afternoon with Town Square. How might we do all this? Might we change the format? Might we do it over the course of an afternoon or a day, and do it quarterly, or have a conference or whatever? Totally open to what works for all of you. As you all know, this was all born out of a consultation exercise, so we tried to make it work to fit with everybody's wants and needs, and so far so good. So always good to refresh it and ensure that we're not missing anything that you'd like to see. So that's pretty much it. If you wouldn't mind, as ever, you can feedback on those questions actually via the survey on the QR code. That would be enormously valuable, thank you, because we've fed back today to West Sussex County Council on this contract as it's now come to an end. And 22 businesses that have been through the programme, we've got a net promoter score of 9.9, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
Only one person said 8. I think they slipped on the keyboard. There's always one.
Sorry, John.
Don't worry, I know where they live.
You asked me to be honest.
No, it was amazing. We've had amazing feedback, but we've also had loads of really positive, not confirmations as if I was looking for affirmations, but a lot of the things that you've said that they're born out of experience, but mentoring on the programs, I mean, for all of you that have had the mentors, they've all been quite carefully curated matches, and the feedback on all the mentoring has been really, really positive. And that's because I think we went to, well, Sam and I debated all of them until we thought we got the right fit. And I think that's the difference between making a program work where things like workshop sessions can be quite difficult, because you can't make them long enough, or you can't make the activities deep enough and useful enough, and everybody's knowledge is at different levels. It's really hard to pitch. So, no, we're delighted with how it turned out. So, thank you to everyone for participating. That's it.